Welcome to the virtual taster lesson for the Masters in Science programme, Nursing with Dual Qualification and Leadership here at the University of Leicester. I apologise we can't be all together today, however hopefully you will still enjoy this taster lesson on the topic of cardiology. My name is Joanne McAllister and I'm one of the permanent adult nurse lecturers here at the university, and I have a pure passion for cardiology. Even before I was a nurse, I worked in cardiology within the NHS. But then I joined the army, became a military critical care nurse. So clearly, cardiology has always been literally at the heart of everything that I've always done. So today we're going to run through 4 main learning outcomes that you can see on the screen here. So the first one is understanding the functions of the heart. The second will be able to label the basic diagrams of the heart. The third will be to understand the flow of blood around the heart. And the fourth will be the role of the valves in producing some of the heart sounds. So I would like to start with some fun facts about the heart, and the first one we're going to look at is about the heart size. So if we want to know how big our hearts are, it's fairly simple. Just look at the size of your fist. So a clenched fist is about the same size as your heart. The heart grows at the same rate as the rest of your body, and that means that a baby's heart is around the same size as its fist, so really little when it's first born. Obviously, an adult heart is many times larger. So our second fun heart fact is about heart weight. Now, let's think about the weight of the heart. Considering what a big job it does and how much muscle is made up out of, it might actually be lighter than you think. So a human heart size depends on the body that it's in. Not only the size of the body, but whether that's a male or a female body. Women's hearts are naturally smaller than male hearts, and on average, a female heart would weigh approximately 250 grams. So if we compare this to something that we know quite well, it is a standard pack of butter. Now, I wonder if you feel this is heavier or lighter than you were thinking. I thought this was quite light considering how much work it does in the body. Now, a male heart weighs a little bit more than this, on average 350 grams. And again, if we can compare that to something that we know quite well, it is about the weight of the contents of a standard Nutella jar. Again, not really that heavy. So it sits quite nicely in the centre of our chest without weighing us down. Now, our last fun fact of the day is that laughter really is the best medicine. Now, it's one of those old sayings that has stuck around, and the reason for this is because it's partially true. Laughter really is good for your heart. Studies have shown that a hearty laugh can prompt blood vessels to expand and contract, and this increases the blood flow by around 20%. Now, this can promote healthier blood vessels and help to ward off cardiovascular disease. Now, if nothing else today, make sure you have a good old laugh. So, as we've mentioned before, the heart, a muscular organ, is about the size of our fist, and it's located just behind and slightly to the left of the breastbone. It's located in the mediastinum, which just means the space between our lungs. And we can see this on the picture on the screen, that the heart is very closely located between the two lungs. The apex of the heart, which is actually the pointy base of the heart, sits very close to the diaphragm, which is a vital organ involved in breathing. So it sits quite snugly tucked up away in our chest cavity, protected by both our breastbone and our rib cage. Now, the heart is also surrounded by a thin sac called the pericardium, and that also helps protect your heart so it can carry out its vital functions. Now, we're going to talk briefly about the functions of the heart, and I know that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the primary function of a heart is to pump blood around the body, both to the lungs via the pulmonary circulation and to the rest of the body by the systemic circulation. And by systemic, I just mean whole body or body-wide. So the cardiovascular system is made up of both the heart and the blood vessels, but also the blood itself. And it's got 3 main functions. And the first one is transport. So it's transporting oxygen, nutrients, and hormones to cells throughout the body. And it also removes metabolic wastes from our body as well, such as carbon dioxide and nitrogenous wastes. The second function is protection. So protection of the body by white blood cells, antibodies and proteins that circulate within the blood and defend the body against any foreign microbes and toxins. Clotting mechanisms are also present within the blood, and that helps to protect the body from major blood loss after any injuries. The third and final function of the heart is regulation, and that's regulation of body temperature and water content of the cells. Now we're going to consider the heart structure. Now, whenever we look at the heart diagram, we always assume that this heart is like it is placed in somebody's chest. So if we take this heart, pop it into somebody's chest, then the person that owns this heart, this would be their right hand side, and therefore this would be the left hand side. And that's always the same when we're considering diagrams of the heart. So the heart is like a pump, and it sends blood around the body, and it's divided into right and left sides. Now this is separated by a septum, which is indicated here in the diagram. Now this is a thick muscular wall. This separates the left and the right hand sides of the heart. So there are 4 chambers of the heart, and it's replicated on both sides. So on the right hand side, we have the right atrium, which is here. And we also have the right ventricle, which is here. Okay. And we have exactly the same on the left-hand side. We've got a small left atrium, and we've got a larger left ventricle. So there are also some main arteries and veins that play a pivotal role in transporting the blood around the heart and to the lungs and to the body. So when blood is leaving the heart to go to the lungs, it leaves via the pulmonary arteries. So it exits the right ventricle and into this large pulmonary artery we can see here on the diagram. Now, when it returns from the heart, it returns via these smaller pulmonary veins, and we have those on both the right-hand side and the left-hand side of our heart. But they both feed into the left atrium. When blood leaves the heart and is transported to the rest of the body via the systemic circulation, okay, it leaves via the aorta. So it leaves the left ventricle and up into this big thick artery here called the aorta. So the heart also has 4 valves that regulate the flow of blood through the heart. So we have 2 atrioventricular valves. Now, the reason why they're called atrioventricular valves is because they're between the atria and the ventricles. So on the right-hand side, we have a tricuspid valve here. And that is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And on the left-hand side, we have a mitral valve. Now, sometimes that's also called a bicuspid valve, in case anyone's already heard of it. And that is between the left atrium and the left ventricle. We also have 2 semilunar valves. Now, the reason why they're called semilunar valves is because of the shape of the valve. And our first one is on the right-hand side, between the right ventricle and the entrance to the pulmonary artery. Okay? And that is handily called the pulmonary valve. And we have another on the left-hand side, between the left ventricle and the entrance to the aorta. And again, that's handily called the aortic valve. So these valves ensure that the blood flows in the direction that we want it to and remains in the compartments that we desire. But I will cover more about valves later on in the PowerPoint presentation. We're now going to talk about blood flow around the heart. The left and right sides of your heart work together to pump the blood. The right side of your heart pumps blood from the heart to the lungs, and the left-hand side of the heart pumps blood from the heart to the rest of your body. So, a pumping cycle begins when blood from your body that is low in oxygen returns to your heart and enters the right atrium. We can see that on the video. When the right atrium is full, it contracts and the tricuspid valve opens, and the blood is pumped into the right ventricle of the heart. When the right ventricle is full, the tricuspid valve closes, and this prevents backflow of blood into the right atrium. We want all the blood to remain in the right ventricle. Full of blood, the heart's right ventricle now contracts, and the pulmonary valve opens, and blood is pumped into the pulmonary artery and is carried to your lungs. The pulmonary valve closes quickly again to prevent blood from flowing back into the right ventricle. Oxygen-rich blood returns back from the lungs through the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium where it fills up with blood. The left atrium now contracts and the mitral or bicuspid valve now opens and blood is pumped into the left ventricle. So this occurs at exactly the same time as a new contraction is taking place in the heart's right atrium. When the heart's left ventricle is full, the mitral or tricuspid valve closes and prevents backflow of blood into the atrium. The heart's left ventricle now contracts and the aortic valve opens and oxygen-rich blood is pumped into your aorta and carried around the rest of your body. The aortic valve closes quickly and again prevents blood flowing back into the left ventricle. So this occurs at the same time as a new contraction taking place in your heart's right ventricle. Meanwhile, your heart's atria have filled with blood and the cycle continues over and over again. Your blood, if you consider one red blood cell, makes a round trip through your body around 1,000 times a day. So that results in about one cycle every minute and a half. And this just indicates how fast flowing your blood is around your body. Now, if we were together, I would be handing around some stethoscopes and asking you to listen to either your own heartbeat or one of your friends' heartbeats in the class. If you happen to have a stethoscope lying around, carry on and do it now. But when we listen to these heartbeats, often the sound you can hear is referred to as a lub-dub sound of your heart. A lot of people make the reasonable assumption that this is the sound of different chambers of your heart contracting, almost like listening to the pump working hard to push the blood around the body. And after all, we do call it our heartbeat, so it makes sense that this is the sound of the actual heart beating. However, this is actually not the case. It has nothing to do with the chambers and everything to do with the valves that we've already mentioned today. So, because we're talking about the heart valves, let's quickly recap the names and the locations of the valves. I've got a slightly different animation here just to show you. So, we've got two atrioventricular valves. These sit between the atria and the ventricles. On the right-hand side, we've got the tricuspids, and on the left-hand side, we've got the mitral. We've also got semilunar valves, which are called that because of their shape. And again, on the right-hand side, we've got the pulmonary, and on the left-hand side, we have the aortic. So when we listen to our heart beating via our stethoscopes, we hear the beating sound, or is more often referred to as a lub-dub sound. Now this sound corresponds to the opening and closing of the valves in your heart. So the first lub sound is softer than the second, and this is the sound of the mitral and tricuspid valves closing after the ventricles has filled with blood. As the mitral and tricuspid valves close, the aortic and pulmonary valves open to allow blood to flow from the contracting ventricles. So like we mentioned before, blood from the left ventricle is pumped through the aortic valve to the rest of the body, while blood from the right ventricle goes through the pulmonary valve and onto the lungs. So the second dub is much louder, and it's the sound of the aortic and the pulmonary valves closing. So now we know what we're listening to when we listen to our heartbeat through the stethoscopes. So just to sum up, there are 4 main chambers of the heart, and there are also 4 valves of the heart. And these all work together to deliver blood to both the lungs and the rest of the body. And now you know that the term heartbeat is slightly misleading, and that actually what we're listening to in the stethoscope is the sound of the valves closing shut to prevent any backflow of blood. So I personally love the heart. I think it's one amazing mean machine. And one more last fun fact for you. The average human heart beats around 100,000 times a day. So over an average lifespan of 70 years, it's going to beat 2.5 billion times without even taking an annual leave day. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the virtual taster lesson, and I very much hope to see you in person at the University of Leicester soon. Please take care.